Ambassador Kim Hana walked slowly through the long corridor leading to the most important room in the galaxy. Her black diplomatic uniform felt heavy on her shoulders, and she could feel sweat on her palms despite the cool air of the massive space station. This was Harmony Prime, a neutral meeting place floating in deep space where the greatest decisions affecting billions of lives were made. Behind her, Dr. Park Jin-woo carried a small silver case containing humanity's hopes for the future. Inside were data chips holding the secrets of Earth's most advanced technologies, medical treatments that could cure diseases affecting dozens of alien species, clean energy systems that could power entire worlds without pollution, cultural programs that could bring understanding between different forms of life across the stars. "Remember," Kim whispered to her companion as they approached the enormous crystalline doors, "we are not begging. We are offering partnership." Park nodded, though his hands shook slightly as he gripped the case. Both humans knew that everything depended on the next few hours. Earth had spent 10 years preparing for this moment after first contact with the Galactic Confederation. Every word of their presentation had been carefully chosen. Every piece of technology had been selected to show humanity's peaceful intentions and useful capabilities. The doors opened with a soft musical sound, revealing a chamber so vast it seemed to stretch beyond the horizon. Seats arranged in concentric circles rose like a great amphitheater, each section designed for different types of alien life. Some species needed high-temperature environments and sat behind energy barriers. Others required low-gravity fields or special atmospheric mixtures. 200 different species filled the chamber. Kim had studied them all during her preparation. There were the tall, graceful ethereals who communicated through color changes in their translucent skin. The massive rock-like stonebringers, whose voices sounded like avalanches. The tiny, quick-moving sparklings who lived their entire lives in just 20 Earth years but possessed incredible intelligence. At the center of the chamber stood Prime Counselor Velt. He belonged to the Dominion species, looking like a giant praying mantis walking upright. His forearms moved constantly as he spoke, and his large compound eyes could see in directions humans couldn't imagine. The Dominion had been founding members of the Confederation 3,000 years ago, and their species held tremendous influence over galactic politics. "The humans request membership in our ancient confederation," Veltar announced, his voice amplified by translation devices that converted his clicking sounds into words every species could understand. "They offer what they call advanced technologies, and claim to have peaceful intentions toward all galactic civilizations." A wave of sound swept through the chamber as hundreds of different species began discussing the human request. Some voices sounded curious, others skeptical, and many seemed completely uninterested. Kim felt her heart racing, but kept her face calm and confident. She stepped forward to the speaking platform in the center of the chamber. Looking up at the thousands of eyes watching her from every direction, she began the speech she had practiced countless times. "Honored counselors and respected beings of all worlds," Kim said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced sound systems. "Humanity comes before you today, not as conquerors seeking to dominate, but as potential partners hoping to contribute to the greater good of our shared galaxy." She gestured to Dr. Park, who activated a holographic display showing Earth's medical breakthroughs. "We offer treatments for the wasting disease that affects the ethereal young. We have developed fusion reactors that produce no dangerous waste and could power the industrial worlds of the Stonebringers. Our cultural exchange programs could help species understand each other better and prevent the conflicts that have troubled some border regions." For 20 minutes, Kim presented humanity's gifts to the galaxy. She spoke of Earth's commitment to peace, showing how humanity had ended its own wars and worked together to reach the stars. She demonstrated technologies that could help solve problems affecting multiple species. She offered friendship and cooperation in exploring the unknown regions of space. When she finished, the chamber fell silent for a long moment. Then Veltar spoke a single word in his clicking language, and the great doors sealed shut. The human delegation was left to wait outside while the council deliberated. 3 hours passed. Kim and Park sat in a small waiting room, drinking water, and trying to stay calm. Neither spoke much, both lost in their own thoughts about what the council might decide. Through a window, they could see the stars stretching endlessly in all directions, representing the vast community humanity hoped to join. Finally, the doors opened again. Veltar emerged alone, his forearms folded across his chest in a gesture Kim recognized as formal rejection. "The council has reached its decision," he announced in a voice that carried no emotion. "Humanity's application for membership in the Galactic Confederation is denied. Your species demonstrates too much historical violence and unpredictable behavior. Earth and its colonies are hereby restricted to your home solar system. Any attempt to expand beyond those boundaries will be considered an act of aggression and met with appropriate force." Dr. Park's silver case slipped from his numb fingers, clattering on the floor. Inside, the technologies that could have helped billions of beings across the galaxy lay unused and unwanted. Kim stared at Veltar in shock, unable to believe what she was hearing. Humanity had offered its hand in friendship and been answered with a cage. Captain Lee Minho stood on the bridge of his exploration ship, watching something that would haunt his dreams forever. Through the main viewing screen, he could see the medical transport ship Healing Light floating peacefully in space, its white hull marked with the Red Cross symbol that meant healing and hope throughout human space. But Healing Light was not a warship. It carried no weapons, no soldiers, no tools of destruction. Its cargo holds were filled with medicine desperately needed on Mars colony, where a terrible disease had already killed thousands of people. Men, women, and children were dying while waiting for the vaccines that could save their lives. "Captain," called out Communications Officer Choi Soman from her station. "We're getting a warning message from the Confederation patrol ships. They're ordering the Healing Light to turn back immediately." Lee watched as 3 alien warships moved closer to the medical transport. These were not the sleek vessels of peaceful exploration. They were heavy military ships, their dark hulls bristling with weapon systems designed to destroy and kill. Each ship was 10 times larger than the small medical transport they were threatening. "Sir, Captain Park of the Healing Light is requesting permission to continue," Solman reported, her voice tense with worry. "He says the people on Mars can't wait any longer. The death count is rising every day." Lee closed his eyes for a moment, knowing what was about to happen but feeling powerless to stop it. The Confederation had made their quarantine rules very clear. No human ship was allowed to travel beyond Earth's solar system, no matter what the reason. Even medical supplies to save human lives were forbidden. On his screen, Lee watched Captain Park make the decision that would cost him everything. The Healing Light began moving forward, carrying its precious cargo of medicine toward Mars colony. The ship's captain knew he was breaking Confederation rules, but he also knew that thousands of people would die if he turned back. The Confederation ships opened fire without another warning. The first energy blast hit the medical transport's engines, causing bright explosions that lit up the darkness of space. The Healing Light tried to send out a distress signal, but a second blast destroyed its communication systems. The third blast broke the ship in half, spilling its cargo of medical supplies into the cold vacuum of space like scattered hope. "No," Salmon cried out from her station, her hands flying over the controls as she tried to reach the dying ship. "Captain, we have to help them." But Lee knew it was too late. The Healing Light and all 37 people aboard were gone. The vaccines that could have saved thousands of lives on Mars colony were now frozen, debris floating in space. The Confederation had made their point with deadly clarity. A new transmission appeared on the main screen. This time it showed the face of the alien commander who had ordered the attack. He was a reptilian creature with scales that looked like armor and cold yellow eyes that showed no emotion at all. When he spoke, his voice was as cold as his stare. "This is Commander Dexfell of the Confederation Defense Force," the alien said. "The humans violated our quarantine protocols by attempting to send supplies beyond their restricted zone. Let this destruction serve as a warning to your kind. Any further violations will be met with the same response." The transmission ended, leaving Lee and his crew staring at the wreckage of what had once been a ship full of hope and healing. In the silence that followed, Lee could hear the quiet sobbing of his communications officer and the angry muttering of his crew members. Far away on Earth, President Yoon Dae-yoon received the terrible news in the emergency meeting room of the Global Council building. The leaders of every nation on Earth had gathered to hear the report, and the room fell silent as Lee's recorded message played on the large screen. "They didn't just destroy a ship," Lee's voice said from the recording. "They destroyed our medicine, our hope, and our people who were only trying to help others live." Defense Minister Kong Hae-jin activated a holographic display that showed the current positions of Confederation forces around Earth's solar system. The display revealed dozens of alien warships positioned at the very edge of human space. Their weapons all pointed inward toward Earth and its colonies. "Mr. President," Minister Kang said in a voice filled with controlled anger, "these monitoring stations they built aren't just watching us. They're containing us like dangerous animals in a zoo. Their weapons aren't positioned to protect the galaxy from us. They're positioned to destroy us if we try to leave our cage." President Yoon looked around the room at the faces of world leaders who had spent their lives working for peace. These were not warlike people, but the destruction of the healing light had changed something fundamental in their hearts. "Then we will make one final attempt at peace," President Yoon decided. "Record a message and send it to every world in the Confederation. Let every species in the galaxy hear humanity's last offer of friendship." The message that went out to billions of beings across thousands of worlds was simple and direct. President Yoon's face appeared on screens throughout the galaxy as he spoke words that would be remembered forever. "We came in peace, offering our friendship and our partnership to build a better galaxy for all species. We ask once more, give us the chance to prove that humanity can be a force for good among the stars. We want to heal, not harm. We want to build, not destroy. This is our final offer." The galaxy's response came not in words of diplomacy or hope, but in the form of even more Confederation warships moving into position around Earth's solar system like hungry predators surrounding their prey. Dr. Shin Taeyang sat in his underground laboratory, surrounded by floating holographic screens, showing data that made his hands shake with excitement. The laboratory was buried deep beneath Seoul, in a complex so secret that most government officials didn't know it existed. For weeks, he had been studying something that no human scientist had ever seen before. "Director Nam Jae-won," he called out, his voice echoing in the sterile white room. "You need to come see this right now." Director Nam hurried over from her office, her sharp eyes immediately focusing on the streams of data floating in the air around them. She was a small woman with gray hair, but everyone in the building respected her intelligence. She had been studying alien psychology since humanity's first contact with other species, trying to understand how different minds worked across the galaxy. "What am I looking at, Taeyang?" she asked, her voice calm despite the urgency in his call. "It's humanity's response to the Confederation threat," he explained, pointing at charts and graphs that showed patterns of human behavior across the entire planet. "Look at these unity measurements. They're unlike anything we've ever recorded in human history." Director Nam studied the data, her eyes growing wider with each passing second. The numbers showed something incredible happening on Earth. Countries that had been enemies for hundreds of years were suddenly working together. People who had fought wars over religion, race, and politics were joining forces against a common enemy. "The unity coefficient is beyond anything we thought possible," she whispered, staring at charts that showed cooperation levels reaching nearly perfect scores. National boundaries are becoming meaningless. Ethnic divisions are disappearing. Religious differences are being set aside. In the past, humans had always fought each other. Wars had been constant throughout history, with nations competing for resources, land, and power. But now, for the first time ever, humanity faced a threat that came from outside their own species. The Confederation had given humans something they had never had before, a common enemy that threatened all of them equally across the planet. Miraculous changes were happening. The United States was sharing its most secret military technology with Russia and China. North Korea was opening its borders to South Korean engineers. Israel and Palestine were working together to build defense systems. India and Pakistan were combining their nuclear programs not to threaten each other, but to protect Earth. High above the planet. In a massive orbital shipyard that hadn't existed 6 months ago, Admiral Han Jungmin watched ships being built at a speed that seemed impossible. The shipyard stretched 4 kilometers in every direction, with thousands of construction bays working day and night to create humanity's first true space navy. Admiral Han was a tall woman with silver hair who had spent her life studying military strategy. She had commanded Earth's small exploration fleet during peacetime, but now she was building something the galaxy had never seen, a human war machine, powered by the combined efforts of an entire species. Status report, she commanded, standing on the observation deck of the shipyard's command center. Ma'am, we're producing ships faster than our most optimistic projections, reported her construction chief, a man whose eyes were red from lack of sleep. What should have taken years is happening in weeks. Every nation on Earth is contributing their best technology and workers. Through the massive windows, Admiral Han could see ships taking shape in the construction bays. These weren't the peaceful exploration vessels humanity had built before. These were warships, sleek and deadly, designed with one purpose: to break the cage the Confederation had built around Earth. The Confederation made one crucial mistake, Admiral Han said to her fleet commanders, who appeared as holograms around the conference table. They assumed our peaceful offer meant we were weak. They thought because we came asking for friendship, we had no strength to offer anything else. She activated a display showing the technologies that humanity had developed but never revealed during their diplomatic missions. They never bothered to investigate what we chose not to show them. They saw our medical advances and clean energy, but they missed our real capabilities. In another part of the shipyard, Colonel Bei Mingji stood before a demonstration chamber where humanity's true power was about to be revealed. She was Earth's leading weapons specialist, a woman who had spent years developing technologies that the galaxy had dismissed as primitive. "Observe," she said to the gathered military leaders, activating a series of displays that showed weapon systems beyond anything the Confederation possessed. The first display showed fusion warheads that used quantum enhancement to multiply their destructive power by thousands. The second revealed projectiles that could travel at significant fractions of light speed, making them nearly impossible to intercept. The third demonstrated cyber warfare systems that could hack into any alien technology and turn their own ships against them. "The galaxy thinks human nuclear technology is crude and outdated," Colonel Bei explained, her voice filled with cold determination. "They believe our computer systems are primitive compared to their advanced networks. They consider our military doctrine to be based on ancient wars between our own species." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "They're about to learn that we've been developing these technologies not to conquer others, but to defend ourselves against exactly this situation. Every weapon system you see here was designed with one goal: to fight an enemy with superior numbers, but inferior understanding of human innovation." The room fell silent as the implications became clear. Humanity had offered peace first, but they had never been helpless. They had simply chosen diplomacy over destruction, cooperation over conquest. "They wanted to see our fury," Colonel Bei said grimly, her finger hovering over controls that could unleash unprecedented devastation. They're about to get their wish. Above Earth, the orbital shipyards continued their impossible work, building humanity's answer to galactic arrogance one ship at a time. Admiral Han Jungman stood perfectly still in the command center of her flagship, watching something that would burn into her memory forever. On the main screen, Research Station Titan 7 was sending its final transmission before 3 Confederation heavy cruisers turned it into glowing debris. The research station had been humanity's pride, built in orbit around Saturn's largest moon. Inside worked 3,000 of Earth's brightest minds, scientists developing new medical treatments, engineers creating better life support systems, and researchers studying the mysteries of deep space. Many had brought their families to live on the station, creating a small community dedicated to expanding human knowledge. Admiral, incoming transmission from Titan 7, reported Communications Officer Park Yun-ho, his voice tight with emotion. On the screen appeared Dr. Kim Soo-ho, the station's director. Behind him, alarms were flashing red and people were running in panic through the corridors. "This is our final message to Earth," Dr. Kim said, his voice steady despite the terror in his eyes. "The Confederation ships are demanding we surrender our research data. We've refused to give them our medical discoveries that could help the galaxy. If we must die, we die as free humans." The transmission cut to static as the alien warships opened fire. 3,000 lives ended in seconds, turned to vapor and scattered metal floating in the cold darkness of space. Admiral Han felt something break inside her chest, but her voice remained calm and controlled. "Captain Oh Sung-woo, what's our fleet status?" Captain Oh, a young officer who had earned his rank through brilliance rather than age, checked his displays with steady hands. "All fleet elements are in position throughout the solar system, Admiral. Operation Thunderstrike is ready to commence on your command." For months, humanity had been building and positioning ships in secret locations throughout their solar system, hidden behind asteroids, concealed in the shadows of moons, disguised as harmless cargo vessels. The Confederation believed they had humanity trapped and helpless, but they had never bothered to look carefully at what humans were actually doing. "Admiral." Han looked around the command center at her officers, young men and women who had trained their entire lives for exploration and peaceful contact with alien species. Now they were preparing to fight a war that would determine whether humanity survived or became slaves. "All ships," she said into her communication system, her voice carrying 200s of vessels throughout the solar system, "execute Operation Thunderstrike. Show them what happens when you murder innocent people in the name of galactic order." The battle began at the heliopause, the boundary where the solar wind from Earth's sun meets the emptiness of interstellar space. Here, the Confederation had positioned their most powerful fleet, thinking they could easily destroy any human resistance. Confederation Admiral Zexthal was an ancient being whose species had conquered dozens of worlds over thousands of years. He expected the humans to attack in wild fury, charging straight forward like primitive animals. Instead, he witnessed something that would be studied in military schools across the galaxy for centuries to come. Human ships appeared from everywhere, at once, but not where the Confederation expected them. They came from above and below the plane of the solar system, using the gravity of giant planets like Jupiter and Saturn to accelerate to incredible speeds. They emerged from asteroid fields, where they had been hiding, invisible to Confederation sensors. The human vessels were smaller than the massive Confederation battleships, but they moved like living creatures. They twisted and turned through space in patterns that seemed impossible, their pilots using three-dimensional thinking that the aliens couldn't match. Lieutenant Commander Kim Ji-hoo led Ghost Squadron, 12 small fighters that had launched from a hidden base on one of Jupiter's moons. His ships were so small and fast that Confederation targeting systems couldn't lock onto them effectively. "Command, "This is Ghost Squadron," Kim reported over the radio as his fighters weaved through the wreckage of alien ships. "The enemy's main battle line has completely collapsed. They never saw us coming from the gas giant's shadow." But what shocked the watching galaxy wasn't the speed or skill of human attacks. It was something much more powerful and terrifying to species that had ruled through fear and domination. Humanity showed mercy. Every human weapon strike hit military targets with surgical precision. When Confederation ships were disabled, human vessels immediately broadcast surrender terms. When alien crew members ejected in escape pods, human rescue ships arrived first to pull them to safety. Medical facilities on Confederation vessels were marked as protected zones and left undamaged, even during the fiercest fighting. Captain Lee Jinsu commanded a human medical ship that followed behind the attack fleet. "We're picking up survivors from the Confederation cruiser Dominator," he reported. "Their crew is requesting medical treatment for wounded. Permission to assist." "Granted," Admiral Han replied immediately. "Treat their wounded exactly as you would treat our own people." News of the battle spread across the galaxy at light speed through the Confederation's own communication networks, on worlds that had been conquered and controlled for thousands of years. Beings who had never dared to hope for freedom began to whisper about the humans who fought with honor even in war. The message was clear: humanity would defend itself with devastating effectiveness, but they would not become monsters in the process. They had offered peace and been answered with murder. Now they offered the same choice to their enemies: surrender with honor or be destroyed with mercy. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Admiral Han Jungman walked slowly through the same crystalline doors that had once closed on humanity's hopes. But now everything was different. The Great Confederation Council Chamber, which had witnessed humanity's rejection years ago, was filled with a silence that spoke louder than any words. The massive doors had not been broken by human weapons or forced open by conquering armies. Instead, they had been unlocked and opened by the very alien species who had once voted to imprison Earth in its own solar system. Representatives from 200 different worlds stood as Admiral Han entered, not in fear, but in respectful recognition of what humanity had accomplished. Prime Counselor Valtar, the tall insectoid being whose clicking voice had once announced humanity's rejection, now approached with all four of his arms spread wide. In his species' culture, this was the ultimate gesture of surrender and submission. His compound eyes, which had once looked upon humans with cold dismissal, now held something that seemed almost like shame. "Admiral Han Veltar said," his voice trembling slightly as the translation devices converted his clicks into human words. "We formally surrender all Confederation military forces to human command. We... We wish to know your terms for our defeat." Admiral Han looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of the galaxy's most powerful species. These were beings who had ruled space for thousands of years, who had conquered worlds and decided the fate of countless civilizations. They had feared humanity's capacity for violence, but now they were learning that human mercy was far more frightening than any weapon. "The same terms we offered before," Admiral Han said simply, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "Peace. Partnership. A galaxy where every species has a voice in its own future, regardless of how young they are or what others think of their past." At the podium where she had once been rejected, Ambassador Kim Hanna now stood with a new title: Earth's first Galactic Chancellor. Behind her hung a new flag that represented not conquest, but cooperation. The banner of the Reformed Galactic Union displayed symbols from hundreds of different worlds, each one representing a species that would now have equal say in galactic government. The blue marble of Earth was there too, not larger than the others, but alongside them, as an equal partner. Dr. Park Jinwoo sat in the front row of observers, watching the ceremony with tears in his eyes. He was older now, his hair gray, and his face lined with years of hard work, but his eyes were bright with hope as he watched his medical technologies being officially adopted by species across the galaxy. The same treatments that the Confederation had once called primitive were now being used to save millions of lives on worlds he had never seen. In the months since humanity's military victories, everything had changed. The fusion reactors that alien engineers had dismissed as crude were now powering entire star systems with clean, endless energy. The human approach to artificial intelligence, which the Confederation had considered backwards, was revolutionizing communication networks throughout the galaxy. Technologies that had been rejected were now seen as revolutionary breakthroughs. Chancellor Kim stepped up to the podium to address not just the Council in the chamber, but the entire galaxy through quantum communication networks that reached every inhabited world. Her voice would be heard by trillions of beings across thousands of star systems. "We came to you years ago offering our hand in friendship," she began. Her words translated instantly into hundreds of different languages. "You answered our offer of partnership with chains and imprisonment. You tried to keep us locked in our own solar system like dangerous animals." The chamber remained completely silent as she continued. "We broke those chains, not through conquest and domination, but through the very same principles of peace and cooperation we had offered from the beginning. We fought only when forced to defend ourselves, and even then, we showed mercy to those who had shown us none." She gestured to the new flag behind her. "Today, we don't create a human empire built on the bones of our enemies. Instead, we build a true galactic union where every species, no matter how small or young, has an equal voice in shaping our shared future." The signing ceremony for the new Harmony Accords took 3 hours, as representatives from every member species added their names to the document that would govern galactic civilization. But unlike the old Confederation, where powerful species made decisions for weaker ones, the new union was based on equality and mutual respect. In the years that followed, children across 1,000 worlds would learn about the species that had possessed the power to destroy their enemies, but chose instead to heal them. In schools built on planets throughout the galaxy, young beings would study how humanity's greatest victory came not from their weapons or their anger, but from their unwavering commitment to the peace they had never stopped believing in. The textbooks would tell the story of how humans offered friendship and were answered with violence, how they broke free from their prison not to seek revenge, but to build a better galaxy for everyone, how they proved that true strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to show mercy even to those who had wronged them. The galaxy had learned its lesson through fire and mercy. Humanity's fury was indeed terrible to witness, but their capacity for forgiveness was a force that could transform the stars themselves. And in that transformation, a new age of peace and cooperation began among the countless worlds that shared the vast darkness of space.